Welcome to Sanguine Arts Locavart, the podcast that features interviews with local Twin Cities artists. This activity is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. I'm your host, Mary Prescott, interdisciplinary artist, composer, and pianist. Today we are speaking with artist and energy worker Kamau Muata, also musically known as Crush. Kamau is a multiverse visionary, fire starter, keeper of the flame, visual and musical artist, music producer and audio engineer, prompt engineer, designer of graphics and clothing, photo and video editor, brand alchemist and market magi, web designer, emerging thought leader, bioenergetic holistic coach, and record label founder. Welcome, Kamau.
Well,
Thanks for speaking with us today.
yo, what's good? What's good? It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Kamau, that is quite a variety of disciplines that you're involved with. I love how vast and open your exploration goes with that. And it seems to really match the breadth of the projects you have coming up this year. I'd love to start by talking about your instrumental journey album, Synesthesia. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, how much time you got?
As much as you want to share.
Yo, it's crazy. I feel like, man, okay, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna reel it back. I I always grew up listening to music with my I guess what people would describe as like headphone music. You know, the kind of music where it's
Uh-huh.
like you might not want to play it in like social situations with your friends, but like when you go home and it's like late at night, it's like 1 in the morning or it's right before bed, you put on your headphones and you're listening to things and you're feeling everything swirl around you. It's like you're being swept up into like Narnia or something. You know, I love,
Uh-huh. And it's just for you.
yeah, exactly. I love those type of unique experiences because I feel like there's a certain type of music that you have to make to really make it. Um, I would say to get your music into certain spaces where I feel like music is more popular sometimes. Like, you know, if I want to be in the club, I got to make a certain type of music, or if I want to be
Hmm.
have my music played for at parties, you know, that's a certain type of music, you know, and I feel like that crowd, it attracts a lot of people, but also there's so many times
Hmm.
where we're not in those situations where it's like, where's the music for that? Where's the music for all of these emotions and things that we've experienced that we don't even know how to articulate? And I feel like
Hmm.
in making this project, my goal was really to be able to give people a way to live out those emotions, to live out those parts within themselves that they may
Hmm.
have not even confronted yet, you know?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's almost it's a simpler thing to do through an instrumental album than it is to do through a written album, you know, because I have two albums coming. I have one that's called Rainbow Body, and then I have another
Hmm.
one that's the Synesthesia album we're talking about right now. Now the
Hmm.
Rainbow Body album, that's going to be the vocal album. That's got vocals, it's production all by me, mixed, mastered, engineered, the whole Rustin, you know. And then we've got Synesthesia, which is the instrumental journey, but it's a completely different sound, completely different purpose, you know, because it's really for your internal landscape. Sometimes when we have
Hmm.
words over the words dictate how we feel so much that we don't get to ask ourselves how we feel. And
Right, right.
it's so
Yeah.
deep because I feel like when it comes to beats and things like that, there's a certain power in being the producer of a song. And I'm sure you write songs and things of like you're really giving people this world to exist within, and within that they have their own experience and they'll find things that you never even found just because they might have explored it more. You know, I have
Mm, mm.
songs that are and beats and things that I share with friends, and they'll play it out before it's even dropped. You know, it hasn't even hit the internet yet, they've already played it
Yeah.
400, 500 times. You know, I'm like, what? You know, it's such a crazy thing, you know, to see the way that people experience music, even with the music that has lyrics. You know, I have people come up to me sometimes and they'll just spit the line back to me, and I'm like, that's not even the line, but if you heard that, then that's what it is. That's what it is, because
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I love that.
it's so subjective. but also there's a thing that I want to do with synesthesia, especially just because it it connects to a piece of what I would consider, I guess, my inner child, you know,
Mm.
because that's the reason that I made it, is for the inner child part of people that experiences some of the things that maybe I experienced when I was a kid, and I would close my eyes and see different things, different realms,
Mhm.
and dream, and just have your imagination just blown wide open, and spark that creativity. I really want to give people that spark when they hear it, So I would say it's really an
Mhm.
album to either be in your own peaceful space to, or maybe I would say better yet, to create to. So if you create things, if you create art, or if you're doing something, if you like to use those creative facilities, play the album in the background and let it take you on a journey, because I think that's the best environment for it. I call it
Hmm.
synesthesia
Hmm.
because I've always, when I create, like, I always feel like I'm experiencing different things as more than one sensation sometimes. Like, every
Mhm.
number has always had a color in my head, every
Mhm.
color, has a different range of emotions and frequencies and things that's with that, and every sound
Hmm.
I see the colors of sounds all the time. And I used
Hmm.
to think that was just
Hmm.
automatic. I used to think just everybody experienced that, but I
Hmm.
guess,
Mhm.
some people don't, but maybe I feel like that's something that people maybe it's something that everybody can experience, but it's something maybe you have to tap into. You have to tune in with a certain part of yourself to be able to perceive that in that
Hmm.
way. Um,
Mhm. Mhm. So
but
you have synesthesia.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I
Mhm.
have it, maybe not as intense as some
Mhm.
people. I'm sure there's like some gifted children out here, just like they don't even walk, they don't touch the ground, they just levitate everywhere and just like interpret the universe in crazy Dalai
Mhm.
Lama ways. But who knows? Like, for me, I really experience it a lot through art, most commonly. I think on a day-to-day basis it's not something I really think about. It's just kind of like there's this light
Mhm.
layer of, okay, if I flip on this lens, then I'm able to see this a different way. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so synesthesia came along. It recently got the name synesthesia. And it's something that I feel like I had been sitting on for a while. It used to be called
Mhm.
Formless. It used to be called
Okay.
Formless slash Many Faced God. Um,
Many-faced guy?
Many Faced God. Wait, Many Faced God. But if you read it out, it looks like Many
Oh,
Faced God.
God, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Misunderstood you, sorry.
yeah. It was all, Many Faced God was all one word, and then it was Formless in the beginning. And
Uh-huh.
I think that concept is still in it in
Mhm.
synesthesia, and I'll explain that in a
Mhm.
second. But
Mhm.
it's so at the point that I'm at right now, I'm 75% it's going to be synesthesia, but there still is that 25% of the original idea that it might be Formless or Many Faced God. But it's all of these names are still
Yeah,
for the same
gotcha.
reason. They still have the
Yeah,
same.
we can give it an AKA,
Yeah,
like, times 2.
yeah. So okay, so Formless, the idea was basically, one of my friends was telling me the process when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. They're in the cocoon or whatnot,
Mhm.
and they actually turn into this, like, they lose their form completely and they turn into this like gobbledygook stuff, and then they from this formless type of state of being, they really crystallize and come together and form their new self. And it's this transmutation, this beautiful metamorphosis transmutation that
Mm.
happens,
Mm.
and then they break out of
Mhm.
this thing. It's almost like this self-made prison. They break out of this and then they're free to fly into, you know, uh, do all the beautiful things that butterflies do. But, you know, like, I think there's something special.
Pollinate flowers.
Yeah, exactly. Pollinate flowers and everything. And I feel like there's something beautiful about that whole process. And in that, I really wanted to explore the formless state of just really tapping into this infinite realm where there's everything,
Mm.
every possibility, infinite imagination. There's this sea, there's this ocean that's here, and it's ubiquitous and it's everywhere. And to be able to peer into it, it's almost like we can only capture little bits of it at a time. Like
Hmm.
we're using a camera or something. We can only get a glimpse of it, but that's not the whole thing. It's like when you try to tell your friend about an experience you had. Oh, I went to the mountaintop. I saw this, that, and this. I got a couple pictures, but the iPhone pictures is not going to give you nothing compared to the full power and magnitude of what you're working with. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
So in this we have formless, which is the concept is from start to finish in the album, you never actually hear the same part twice. So
Hmm.
I wanted to really break a lot of rules in doing that because um I think being in music college, graduating from music college, being out in the world, writing songs for people and putting things out for a while, you realize how like formulaic I feel like a lot of music can be sometimes, especially if it's not in, say, like the cinematic realm. Um, the music that we pop and play on a usual day to day. That music can be really
Hmm.
formulaic, and it's kind of like, all right, you got the intro here, there's the chorus here, there's the
Right,
boom, 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 boom. It's the same every
right.
song. And
Hmm.
especially like coming from like a DJ perspective, sometimes it's like I listen and I watch the way that people react to music. Like in a room full of
Hmm.
people, if you play a song, what's the part of the song that gets them excited? What's the part of them that part of the song where they gotta walk off and get a drink, or you
Hmm.
know it's different for everyone. But I wanted to
Hmm.
make something that didn't follow a structure in that type of way, and it was really just free form, sort of like the imagination. It mimics that, and it starts off in a way that's like you're you're being taken out of like a summer's day, you know, almost kind of nostalgic.
Mm. Hmm.
Me and my friend, we actually recorded some. The cicadas had come out, and they had that buzzing noise, and they're like,
Yeah, yeah,
zzz.
yeah.
So
That
we
is the
got,
sound of summer.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, especially here in Minnesota and Minneapolis,
Yeah.
it's like we hear. I'm so used to hearing
Zzz.
that growing up as a child, and it's like from that sound is actually, it's a very interesting sound because it's almost similar to the type of frequency that you hear when you before you astral project. So if, for instance, you were gonna try to take your lucid dreaming a little bit further and you wanted to dip out into the astral realm and do some things, or I guess whatever people do in the astral realm, there's a lot to do. That's a whole nother interview, but I would say I would
We
recommend,
can get into it if you want.
yeah, I would. It's gonna tie into everything. It's gonna tie into some things later on.
For
But
sure. Yeah.
as a precursor, I would definitely recommend for anybody who's listening, do not try to go into the astral realm unless you know what you're doing or have somebody around you who really knows what they're doing, because that is not the place to be.
I'd love
You
it if
know.
you could tell us more about that. Why the advice? I've
Ah,
I've not done that, so I don't know.
dang. Okay, so this is gonna take a big turn.
That's
So
okay. We'll come back to it later. We'll come back to the other stuff. Go into this room.
let me finish up. I'll finish up the cicada thing, or I don't even know how
Okay.
to say cicada. Here we go.
Yeah,
So
we'll get to cicadas.
that noise when you're asleep, when you're closing your eyes and you're concentrating, and say you had all noise and all distractions cut out, you would listen and hone in on that, and that you would hear a noise maybe somewhat similar to that noise that the cicadas make, and there's probably a reason, an actual deep reason for that. If you go into the
Hmm.
history of the cicadas and the way that people revere them. But when
Mm.
you listen, you'll hear a frequency similar to that. And when you hone in on that, when you concentrate on that and you focus your intention onto it, you'll begin to you'll begin to start the stage that's going to segue you out of your body. If that was something that you were trying to do, there's like a
Mm.
cord that you're able to pull up and you're able to lift yourself out of your body. Some people use a roll method and they do like the roll. Some people, they lift and kind of pull themselves up. But you'll
Mm.
do that and you'll stay attached to your tether, which will allow you to stay attached to your body. I'm not even gonna say the word allow. It will keep you attached to your. And so if you lose that, don't lose track, because when you're dipping in the astral realm, you're basically going into the jungle. And I think a lot of people don't
Mm.
necessarily realize that. And it's something that sometimes it happens to people on accident, where they may
Mhm.
start to begin this process. You know, a lot of people will more commonly experience things like sleep paralysis, and there's definitely movies about this kind of thing too, where you'll
Mhm.
see people are in sleep paralysis, and you're like, you wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, dang, I can't move. I'm awake. I know I'm conscious, but like I can't move my body. I'm like somehow not completely connected right there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And for those situations, the best thing for you, in my opinion, is just to go back to sleep. But in
If
that
you
state,
can.
yeah, exactly. Some people can't. And
I feel like
depending on,
listening to you speak about this, I'm like,
huh,
maybe that did accidentally happen to me once. But that's for another interview too.
yeah, it can get really crazy. I've had it happen to me in the
Yeah.
daytime and the nighttime
Mhm.
before. Um,
Mhm.
but it's one of those things where when you start to shift in between the realms a little bit more, you'll actually start to notice more things. For instance, is you're I guess what people would commonly associate as like a sixth sense, but there's
Mm.
definitely other senses. Like your clairaudience, your clairvoyance, different things might start to be more heightened as you're paying less attention to your physical body and the
Mhm.
sensations of being conscious in what we would consider the waking world. You start to build an awareness of your other bodies. So this actually segues very, very, very well into our next topic soon, which is Rainbow Body, the album that I got.
Yeah.
And in that, so you're say, well, you're in the astral realm, and this
Uh-huh.
is actually pretty important. So I was gonna have to talk about this anyways. If you're in the astral realm, you're basically in. I don't want to say it's the toilet of the 3D, but you're in a space where originally it may have had more of another purpose, but
Mhm.
because of the way that our dimensional structure is set up right now, what's in the astral realm, what you'll find is a lot of the things that we maybe would consider our shadow attributes, you know?
Mm. Mhm.
So when you have like unresolved pain, unresolved traumas, when you have generations of people that have been wiped out and didn't have a proper way to move on. They didn't have
Mhm.
the knowledge of what to do after death. You know, you have a lot of energy that's stuck and it's left behind. And a lot of times we more commonly see that in like movies when it's like, it's in Hollywood or something. We see, oh, the beautiful family moved into a house, and then all of a sudden mirrors start dropping all over the place, and stuff is turning, and there's a random doll in the basement, and who put this doll here, and why is there like
Right.
a book from 1944, and
And
hold
this
on,
page is marked and yeah.
yeah, so you start going through the history of like all that, and that's a way to like sensationalize it, but
Mhm. Mhm.
the topa or the egregor, or the resonance that's left behind from the residue of this energy that wasn't able to be transmuted after death is what can
Mm.
linger around
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
place, especially if there's a powerful reason for maybe why it left or didn't have that conclusion. There's a man named Dan Winter that people should definitely look into. He goes a lot more into the different things that you would encounter in the astral realm, how to maintain good astral hygiene, which is very important. Even if you don't ever plan on astral projecting, just knowing how to maintain
Mhm.
astral hygiene is important. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But Dan Winter did an experiment. Um, he did an experiment. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it was with a friend of his that had died, and
Mm.
they had worked together on so many different things already. But when his friend died, his friend asked him to try to communicate. They wanted to communicate to each other after he passed on, just to as an experiment to see. He knew he was dying, and after he did die, they went into the room and they had special equipment and they measured. They were able to measure where the essence of what was left from the spirit separating from the body, where
Mhm.
that was and what it was doing.
Mhm.
And what they were able to do is they were able to measure it for, I think, about 3 days. This energy around the room, it moved and it was looking for, they were able to communicate with it in some sort of way too. But just in paraphrasing, the energy left through what you could consider a portal or a Stargate type of situation in the
Mm.
room. And it's something that it had to find or open up itself. It's not something that was just there. So if you didn't know what you were looking for, say, like, when people have near death experiences, and some people talk about the white light that they see, and they talk about going
Mhm.
towards the light, and some people are like, don't go to the light. You know, when you go to the light, a lot of times that's considered what would be the reincarnation wheel. So you would be going back into the wheel of reincarnation in order to be
Hmm.
reincarnated again into something else. But if you chose not to go into the wheel of reincarnation, there is another option. There is another option.
Hmm.
And when you do traverse through that other option, you're going to be going through what we would be considering the astral realm. You would be going through the lower astral, the upper astral, and eventually, I guess, wherever you decided to be, or if you wanted to
Mhm.
reconnect with
Mhm.
other essences out there, that would be up to you. And some of this you can also find documented in, like, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Egyptian books like, what is it, Coming Forth by Day, or other
Mhm.
texts, Sumerian texts, and just you can go back, and it's really interesting for how little we talk about some of these subjects, how
Yeah.
long these subjects were talked about and in such great detail around the world. And
Right. Right.
for thousands and thousands of years, it's only really recently that we don't really talk about what happens after you die. And you don't have to die to be in the astral realm, but some of the things you might encounter there, you might encounter ghosts first and foremost, because that's what we'd be able to identify with the most. So that's kind of why I wanted to start with the ghosts, because it's the closest thing to us. If there's a ghost, or there's something that's left over from a person that's there, then
Mhm.
we know how
Mhm.
to interact with that a bit. We know how to interact with that. If you have a family member, you know what to say to them, you know. But there are other things that are solely on the fourth dimension that are not on the third dimension. So that's why I said originally that it's like going into the jungle, because if you don't know you're staring at a tiger, you know, but the tiger knows it's staring at you, like, that's not a
Watch
good
out.
situation to be in,
Watch
you
out,
know?
bro.
Exactly. So that's why it's like, it's really for, I would say, people who are, if you really immerse yourself in that subject and you have a specific reason for venturing out past what would be commonly thought as like the barriers, you know, before it's your time, before it's time to like, have to do that, you might want to read up on that. So, backing up a little bit, what one of the things that this kind of segues into is the the bodies that we have, the different bodies that we have. Because a lot
Mhm.
of times we commonly associate our body that we're in right now in the waking world as this is our body. We think this is like everything. And
Mhm.
the way that I like to like describe it a lot of times is you could think of yourself as like a babushka doll or like in
Mhm.
an egg inside of an egg inside of an egg inside of an
I
egg.
have one right there.
Really? What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Hey, you already know. That's the perfect. Honestly, that is the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
Like, you've got so many different shells, and they're all part of you, you know. But on each layer, you're experiencing something different, and
Mhm.
um, I could kind of think of it as when you begin to awaken the process of your other bodies and what it feels like and what it means and what it looks like, and to awaken the energy that's associated with those other bodies, you start to. It's almost like if you had like a foot, like if we were just a foot and we were like, when your foot falls asleep and then
Yeah.
it's like you wake up and it's like, whoa, you regain this feeling in this other limb of yours. I like to liken these like these are limbs. These are connected to us, but they don't we don't feel them physically, but we feel them on other levels. So
Mm. Mhm.
you could think of like maybe your mental body or your emotional body, you know, and
Mhm.
there's our own emotional body, and then we also have collective emotional bodies that we create and form together that are like the not even like I guess they would call them morpho. I always get the word messed up. Morphogenic. I think it's morphogenic fields, either morphogenic or morphogenetic, but I think it's morphogenic fields.
Okay. Mhm.
And those are like the collective fields that we share. So say like there's something like really hard that might have happened to a group of people, or we're all experiencing something like there's a moment, something that happened in the news, or our whole emotional body together might shift, but our individual emotional bodies will also shift in different ways, but they might not be the same exactly proportionate for everybody, you know
Mhm.
but in
Mhm.
that emotion, there's an emotion that exists there, and it exists because we are holding this thought form in place, and it's not static at that point. It's not something
Mhm.
that is just okay. It's there and it's not doing anything. No, sometimes we kind of like a baby, we can create something like a thought form or this energy and it could take on a life of its own, you know and so
Mhm.
when we're talking about the astral realm especially, you know we have thought forms and things that exist there that maybe are being held in place by other people or other things that are taking on a life and a shape of its own, but it would be sort of abstract for us to interpret here the way that we are right now. But if you encounter it, you can feel it, because say
Mhm.
it's like when you walk into a place and you just feel like, wow, there's a really heavy energy in the room right now,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or you just feel like euphoric. You're like, wow, this is the best place to be. Like, I don't even know why. I haven't talked to anybody yet. I haven't seen much, but I just feel this overwhelming feeling of joy, or laughter,
Mhm.
and all of these
Mhm.
things start coming to you. You know, so there's so many different ways that you could interact with this. So when we're getting to rainbow
Mhm.
body is the second half of this transmutation process. I would say
Okay.
formless or synesthesia is the first half. It's really
Okay.
being able to pick up the sense to be able to perceive other things, to be able to perceive yourself in different ways. And through synesthesia, you're taking a journey inward, and
Mhm.
you're taking a journey. You get to a point where there's a point in the album actually towards the last half where you get into a series. There's like a mini series in the album, and it's called Inside Forever. And
Mhm.
it's basically it's basically like if you went to the what you would consider maybe like the limits of yourself and then went further and then went further again. So
Hmm.
there's some
Mhm.
really there are like there's a place where you almost have to walk through like a valley of mirrors, and there's like a
Mm.
darkness of your shadow self that you have to face. And
Mhm.
the song itself, it's not a euphoric, it's not like a happy go lucky type of song. It's not something that would scare you either necessarily. It's not something that's like purposely, it's not like some Halloween or like
Right, right.
yeah, it's not meant to be like horrorcore or anything like that. It's meant to really just bring you to the internal ceremony within yourself that you're having as you're finding those parts of you and regaining the sleeping portion. So there's even a part where you'll hear like it's kind of like I'm trying to figure out how do I describe this. Like it's kind of like to be like being on a trip. If I don't know, I guess if anybody's ever experimented with psychedelics or anything like that, it's like being on a trip in some
Mhm.
level. But then there's a point where you almost feel completely engulfed and enveloped by your own darkness, and it
Hmm.
it ramps up. It ramps up, and then it's like there's this moment of chaos, and then there's like a peace there's like a moment of peace where you're in this waiting period and you don't know what is going to happen, but it's not complete yet. And then in the
Mhm.
distance, you hear there's chanting, there's like native, I've got some native chanting and things in there, that's like you're hearing like as you're being like put into the earth, you're hearing the earth speak, and you almost like
Hmm.
sync up together. And when you sync up together,
Hmm.
there's like this badass moment that's in there where it's like you almost go in and you rescue yourself. You rescue
Wow.
yourself, and this is like the getting out of whatever it is moment where everything the world feels like it's being like obliterated and chopped in half and like disintegrating as you're
Hmm.
crumbling it, and as it's being crushed, you know you get to the end where you're basically at an ocean. And this is a
Mhm.
really abstract way to describe a song, but like you're
I
basically
mean, it
at an
actually sounds
ocean.
pretty concrete.
Yeah.
I mean, concrete in the way, like, you're just describing, in so much fine detail. It's really quite incredible. Keep going.
Yo, I love to hear it's coming through then. I love to hear that. So you get to the ocean, which is the last track. And it's interesting because you actually arrive at the ocean both in synesthesia and in rainbow body. At the very end, you arrive back at the ocean, and there's a reason
Mhm.
for that. There's a reason for that because I think when we talk about, ooh, excuse me, Mother Earth, and this is just kind of a side tangent, but a lot of times when we refer to like the motherly energy of Earth, we're referring to the
Mhm.
water, and
Hmm.
that's a really deep thing to dive into. But a lot of the landmass and different things that are here have accumulated here over time, but the actual life force, not I won't say that mountains don't have life. Mountains do have life, but it's a different type of life. But the actual collective life force of what people would associate as Mother Earth is definitely water based. When you really go deep and dive into a lot of the stories, traditions, and things as you find out where the thing came from and behind that and behind that and behind that, keep tracing it back. It's always going to lead you back to water. And there's a reason for that.
Hmm.
It goes into a lot of the things that circulated around like the Great Deluge and like the flood that people talk about, the flood that flooded the earth, and
Mhm.
um, Leviathan and like the water dragon, shape shifting water dragon mother, and different things that people have so many stories, and then the story of the Maya culture coming out from the sinking of Atlantis and everything, and the Egyptians and Sumerians and different people who have come through the water and have stories about our people started after the waters consumed everything. When the earth wants to
Hmm.
take things back, it takes it. It just takes it. It's like when Mother Earth wants to do something, she just does it. She's like the
Hmm.
divine creator, but she also will like anybody's mother. She's like, look, I brought you in this world. I'll take you out. You
I'll
know,
take you right out.
yo, for real. And so there's a certain type of life that water has, which is why, especially working with bioenergetics and frequency and things like that, it's the most apparent because you're able to interact with the water in a very special, unique way that you can't with other types of things. Um,
Hmm.
for instance, a lot of people reference Dr. Masaru, I think it's Masaru Emoto's experiments, where he famously did the water crystal experiments, where he would project certain emotions into the water, and maybe like from talking to it a certain way. You might talk to it nice, like a love, somebody you love, or you could really just pour icky, just toxic energy at the water. And when you freeze the water and you see the ice crystals and the formations that it makes, the actual structure of the water changes. And it's because the water is sentient, the water is conscious, and it's constantly moving, and it can sense, it holds memory. Um,
Hmm.
it holds the collective genetic memory of a lot of the animals and life here on this planet. It's why, when we're looking for life, elsewhere, the first thing we're looking for a lot of times is the water. Is there water? If there's water, then something else
Yeah.
might be alive around it.
Right. Water enables life.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about all of these things, I feel like it's important to always come back to the water. So that's why I have at the end of Rainbow Body and the end of Synesthesia, the water thing. So at Synesthesia, you get
Hmm.
to the water after you've completely just been obliterated by yourself, you know, and um, there's like a moment where it picks up, and it picks up, and it's like the moment where your heart is fluttering and you feel like new life and everything's rushing back to you again, and there are sounds in it that are kind of like emulations of what I would consider maybe like water animals. Like
Hmm.
you might hear
Hmm.
like a whale or something in the background, or like what you could maybe describe as like dolphins, or different fish, or like the way that it feels is like something that's like you're immersed in this. And from that experience, you almost kind of like pop out of this bubble at the end. And it's what I like to call like a nuclear love bomb, where it's like you detonate, yourself detonates, and it's like confetti, and it's like this moment where you digress. And from
It's a
there,
celebration.
yeah, exactly, it's a celebration, you already know. And it just kind of fades off into the sunset, and
Mm.
it fades off into the sunset in a way that's almost like just a few minutes have passed, but it feels like a whole journey between when you daydreamed in the sun earlier in the beginning of the album to you're looking at the sunset later,
Mhm.
and it's just like, wow, what has happened? you know so much
Mhm.
has gone on. And
Mhm.
from contrasting that to the Rainbow Body album at the very end, it's a similar feeling, but it's almost like a returning to. I almost want to say it's almost like a returning to source, like a "Am I dead?" type of moment.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Uh-huh.
where it's like it's not
Uh-huh.
necessarily that you are dead, but it's the type of feeling that you might experience where you actually have to question it for a second,
Right. Right.
and you're trying to figure out what are the things that I know that remind me that I'm alive, and
Hmm.
when
Mhm.
you do that, there's like a moment where I call it, the last song is called Return to the Waves. You return to the waves, which is like this infinite ocean that I was kind of talking about earlier, but it's this infinite ocean that's also has the characteristics and the qualities of the ocean, but is also made up of energy, frequency, and vibration. You know, that's why it's the same reason we talk about sound waves. You know, there's a reason that we have wave that we call them sound waves and not just like, I don't know, something else, you know, because the qualities, and this starts to get into like the physics of quality and different things, but the qualities of
Hmm.
sound and of frequency travel and move very similar to the ocean, very similar to the point where if you really dive into esoteric traditions and things like that, you'll find that the ocean and the water is often the separating divider between worlds. So
Mm.
they would envision that there's the ocean below. A lot of people say, like, as above, so below. There's the oceans below us, and then there's the ocean above, which is like, I guess, you know, space and the stars, and some people say the firmament and different things. You know, there's so many different stories about that. And there's even some really interesting stories about some of the floods that we had in the past and how the floods actually came from above and not below. Um, so it
Hmm.
wasn't the ocean rising to flood everything. It was like an intense rain, like if the sky broke, you know. At least that's how they
Hmm.
describe it. So
Hmm.
you can take take that as you will, but it's really interesting because it starts to get into a lot of different things. But getting into rainbow body a little bit, um, you have, for instance, in the very beginning of rainbow body, it takes you where it's another point, exposition point, entry to the world that we're creating here, but it's more from a very like practical, like this is what we're experiencing in the very like very real ground level. This is what we're seeing around us, you know. I just took a moment that was I think it was a moment that was a collage of stuff that happened in 2020 and
Yeah.
2021,
Yeah.
and I wanted to really highlight that because we're starting to dip into the different things that the elements can teach you. And
Mm.
because water is such a big theme in the album, water kind of like it almost triumphs over everything in this realm in some sort of ways. But I think the fire element, there's such an important lesson in fire. And so I wanted to also come at it from the angle of explaining fire because fire is part of one of my aliases. So as an artist, I've
Okay.
always, yeah, it's like it's somehow it all like comes
Yeah.
back
Fire starter.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So it's like as an artist, you know, I consider myself a fire starter, and the I only started really associating with that within the past few years, but in the past, I actually used to sign everything with the Hokage symbol, which is it, Hokage is it would be a character from Naruto, which is an anime, but
Hmm.
the way that I use it actually has nothing to like absolutely zero anything to do with the anime, but it is the same. It is the same two characters, same two Japanese characters.
Hmm.
There's two two letters or two characters that are one of them is fire and then the other one is shadow. So
Hmm.
it would technically translate to fire shadow,
Hmm.
um, which is kind of like what I joke about a lot of times. Like I think of my work as like kind of like the shadow of the fire or like shadow flame. It's like the flame that burns in the place where you like least expect it in a lot of ways. But it means so many different things. You know, I couldn't even
Hmm.
begin to
Hmm.
encapsulate it all in like a couple minutes. But what I do, I sign most of the things that I do. If I don't want to put my name on it, a lot of times like I'll just like sign the the mark, you know,
Right.
just
Right.
like I was here, you know, on some like Banksy stuff or whatever, whatnot.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
And in it, it's interesting because I've been using that for years, but I didn't. There wasn't always so much meaning to it, and I think I had to learn through my experiences with fire in my life what that actually meant. And it's kind of like the light that burns in the darkness in a way. And also, there's this destructive and creative element to fire that is kind of like the water of like
Right.
it can give you exactly what you need. It can feel like it gives you life, and it can also take away everything. And in
Mm-hmm.
2020, I feel like a lot of people felt that when everything, it felt like, yo, the whole world is crumbling, the tower is crashing, it's all coming
Mm-hmm.
down,
Mm-hmm.
and I would stay that way for a while. And for me, during that time, it was such a crazy moment because I wasn't even here. I was in California. I was in Hollywood. I was in the
Hmm.
middle of Hollywood when everything went down with the George Floyd situation,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
was such a trip because in the midst of that, we also had everything with the pandemic, and they had the crazy
Yeah.
curfews out there, and we're hearing helicopters flying over us and everything constantly.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
um, it was such a weird scene because it was like, yo, this is like, I'm like, is the world ending or something? Because literally it was like
Well,
I'm
it
looking
did
on,
feel like that.
huh? Yeah, it definitely did. And it was like, I'm looking on. I remember getting up one morning and my friends are like, turn on the news and everything, and like I'm looking at Vice, and there's like a Vice special, um and they're like literally down the street from like where like my mom and dad's house is, where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
yo, I'm like, they're at Aldi's. Like, what? What are they doing? They're like talking to people and stuff, and
Yep.
they're talking about everything that's going on. Obviously, the police station burned down and other buildings, Target, and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody ran up
Mm-hmm.
in Target for the Xboxes and the PS3s and things. And, it was just like, what in the world are we experiencing?
Yeah.
You know? And it was even trippier for me because it's like I wasn't even there. I was out trying to
Mm-hmm.
make a life in Hollywood and everything. And it was like, whoa, like I feel like I need to be home right now. Like I'm like I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know what it is to be home because everything looks different,
Mm-hmm.
now. And in
Mm-hmm.
the span of like a
Mm-hmm.
week, it's like everything is completely changed. Stuff is boarded up. The vibes are
Yeah.
not the same. You know, we got people in the neighborhood that ain't been there. Like they came from I don't even know where. Really strange things are happening. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like, okay, so in the midst of all this mess, I remember there was a time right before I came back home actually, and I had a tarot reading. I had a tarot
Mm-hmm.
reading, and I had drawn a card that was the tower, you know, and it was really interesting because I really identified with that card because I was like, wow, I feel like in this moment where I'm making this journey, we're gonna take this road trip back home, after being in California, we're like, it's time to go back home. We need to tap in with people, you know, a few months down the line, tap in with friends, family, just see what's going on. Me and one of my childhood best friends, his name is Alfred, really cool guy. He's
Mm-hmm.
also on a song of mine, I got called Wine that's coming out, and we took a trip back home, and it was the most surreal thing ever. And in it, I choose that moment to really highlight because when we got home, I remember I checked in with my crew. That's Ken Collective, so that's all my
Mm-hmm.
my musical family and everybody. That's X,
Mm-hmm.
that's Sweet, Pelly. We got some more people too, but we we got together and we spoke with each other and just like really caught up after like having the time just away from each other. We had all grew up in the same places. We had all circulated the same studio. We came together. We built something, and then it was like, dang, where do we move forward? Coming together
Yeah.
now, like, what are we supposed to do? how are we supposed to use our voices in the world? Like, how are we supposed to um I was supposed to do anything. I would just figure out life, It's just like we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was such a crazy time. So we were in that moment, and there's a moment. There was a clip that actually we captured in that moment during one of our conversations, where we were just ragging on everything that we did before. Like we were just like, yeah, like that's like it's all dead and gone. Like the everything that we had, like the ideas that we had, some of them were good, but some of them we were like happy to let that also die in the fire, and also allowing this
Yeah.
new fire, our new spark, to really spark up and see what that is and acknowledge that moment. And I
Right.
remember in that moment, we were talking about a song that we're talking about a song that my friend Sweet did, which I'm so frustrated it's not out. That's a whole nother
Oh.
thing. But it was out, and then he pulled it, and then he dropped it, and then he pulled it. So maybe you'll hear it one day. I don't know.
Maybe
But
not.
yeah, I'm like, if people want to hear it, they could go to they could go to there's a clip on my page where I show some of the song.
Uh-huh.
It's the longest one. It's the one that says, watch this to the end or
Oh,
something
uh-huh.
like that.
Uh-huh.
And so in the song, it's a very special song to me. Just in the way it impacted me and my artistry, because it's called "Burn the City." Um,
Mhm.
it's called "Burn the City," and it's a song that he wrote and recorded. It was years ago, like years ago, like it was a grip ago, and like if we got to measure things in grips, it was a grip. However much a grip is, it was a lot. I can't calculate it all right now, but trust me, it was a while.
It was a
You
grip.
know, it was one of the better ones where it was like, this sounds like a real full actual song. Like this is dope. We're not just playing around anymore. Like you got one type of one of them songs. And so the song was basically, it was about being just kind of like being a kid growing up, and then also like the changes, just changes, experiencing changes in your life, things, everything around you, and feeling like you got this fire in your heart that's so big that it feel like you guys are gonna burn the city down, you know, because it's like you almost can't even contain it, everywhere that you go, like the spirit is so strong, and it's like you're gonna burn the city down, but not necessarily in the way of, it wasn't necessarily destructive, I would say. And this is me paraphrasing, he could probably explain it way better, but it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily a destructive fire per se, but I think it was fire in all of its truest element of, it is destructive. Something is going to be burned down as I walk over it, you know. But
Mhm.
at the same time, the fire that I'm carrying, this torch that I'm carrying, it is a torch. I'm carrying this torch because there are people that came before me that passed me this torch. This fire is something that I grew
Mhm.
throughout my life, and it's something that
Mhm.
it can't be put out,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's something that is also going to create something so beautiful and big. And I think in that, there's this moment of feeling like, dang, like we really like we it feels like we're gonna burn the city down. It feels like we're gonna burn the city down with this, because we almost can't control it. We almost can't control some of the ideas and things that we're being flooded with. And it felt like that phoenix moment. It felt like the ashes,
Yeah. Mhm.
letting parts of
Mhm.
yourself go, just letting yourself die in the ashes and letting yourself rise up again and become something.
Mhm.
And in those moments when I was looking at everything that was happening in the city, I was like, dang, this is trippy. I was like, this reminded me of the song, you know. I was like, this is like everything that we were talking about before, but it's like happening for
Now
real
it's
now,
happening.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's not a metaphor anymore.
Yeah, and so that's why in the clip, in the longer clip where it's talking about watch this and to the end or whatever or whatnot, it's in that clip you actually see there's a clip of Target down the street burning. Like
Mhm.
that's the real one. Like that's the real clip. That's when it happened. Like on
Right.
the
That's the
ground.
real stuff.
Yeah, and it was like there's more in it as well. Like there's also the moment where in the clip where I'm actually standing next to the bridge that collapsed at one point in time. And it's, you know, being from here, it's like you have
Yeah.
really have to be from here to probably know that.
Yeah.
But that
That
yeah,
was like a holy crap moment. Like, wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally. And it was kind of like one of those another world ending moment for like the people involved with that, and it was just like these things that are happening around us, you know, these things that are falling apart, you know, they do get put back together, you know. And so standing next to the bridge that was collapsed, you know, it was kind of like I wanted to make sure and get that location specifically because really
Mm.
what we're in it to do is build bridges. You know, we're in it to build bridges to repair the bridges that were broken. You know,
Mm. Mm.
and now it's like we're in this place where we're almost like clay, like we can be formed into so many different things, you know,
Right.
and we're
Mhm.
it's like all coming apart. We're in this formless state, you know, so it's like,
Mhm.
okay, how are
Mhm.
we gonna put it back together? And
Mhm.
in it there's some it's some deep stuff because it goes, let's jump a little bit because I want to talk about the bridge when it might be a little bit too early. Um, but in that clip, there's some things that I do with the clips when you guys actually get to see them too, um, with the colors that really tell a little mini story of itself. Because in
Mhm.
at the time when I took the clip and I was by the bridge, I was in blue. I was in all. I was in the because the light from the bridge, it makes everything blue underneath, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so
Mhm.
when I took that, it was actually it was I was younger. My dreads were shorter, you know. I didn't, you know, I styled myself different. Like, things were different, you know. And it was before I had even left to California, um,
Mhm.
before I had even left to California, and it was in this moment where I felt like it was kind of like I was still in the Matrix in a way, you know,
Mm.
like it's
Mhm.
kind of like the blue pill, red pill thing from the Matrix. Like I felt
Right.
like it was still like this is the last inkling that you get of still being in the blue before
Uh-huh.
shit gets
Uh-huh.
real, you know,
Uh-huh. You
and
mean
then
looking
it's
back on that clip or?
yeah, looking back on the clip, we didn't know that at the time, you know.
Mhm.
So I had to put everything
Mhm.
together
Mhm.
in retrospect, seeing this different sequence of events and things. I was like, okay, all right, you know, I see how some of these things may have related, but
Mhm.
um, in it, there's that moment where it's like the moment of innocence, and then you have the first song that I released off of Rainbow Body recently called Torque, which is where you see everything and it's almost like you're in all red. You know, like the whole theme of the video is red. You know, I got the red roses, I got a red biker jacket,
Mhm.
um, like everything is different red lights and things like that. Um, so there's this theme of red and there's this blue versus red thing going on, you know, and it's
Hmm.
very interesting because I think within the blue versus red thing, obviously, you know, people have you've got the Matrix comparison where it's like you've got the blue world, you've got the red, you know, where you're breaking out of this, and then we're also juxtaposing a lot of other things in a dualistic nature because we have
Mhm.
our waking world and our, I guess, sleep realm, dream realms that we were just talking about a little bit ago. Um,
Mhm.
we also have this dichotomy between the normalcy of our world before and everything that we're experiencing now. Um, we also
Mhm.
have a little bit of well, obviously, you know, we've got everything from you know in the political arena. You know, this the blue and red is just another,
Mhm.
you know, I guess another indicator of the same thing going on, and
Mhm.
it's crazy just how charged up people will be. You know,
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
to yeah, it's just how charged up people will be in these situations, and when we're diving into unpacking the duality um of where we were and where we're going that's when I feel like we're really ready to start the journey of what it is that Rainbow Body is, because we're at the moment where this is the beginning. We haven't completed the full transmutation of ourself, but we're
Mm-hmm.
understanding there's a split moment where it's like, okay, clearly there are two different things going on right now at the same time, and like we're coming into the awareness of that, you know. And for us to even go beyond that, to think beyond what that is, first we got to figure out what are we in between, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of like the journey of the neophyte, or like the journey of like the fool in the tarot, where the fool is actually every card, every single archetype, every embodiment of what you're seeing and experiencing, the different personalities. There you go, right there. You already got it. You stay ready. Yo, Mary got
It's
the
just
cool
serendipity,
house.
man.
Yo. So you already know. It's like this is a
Well, yeah.
process. Yeah. It's a process of like we're alchemizing ourselves into gold, you know, and part of the reason I say it's very important to realize what's happening in the process of us alchemizing ourselves into gold, because there is a rise. It's kind of like there is sort of like what people describe as like kundalini a lot of times. Like there's like an internal ceremony that happens where you're rising from your lower self to your higher centers, and through that there's like this pop off moment where you open up like a lid, and the rest of you starts to flood, either out or in, or however you decide to direct the energy. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the album, Torque, the song that I was talking about, the single that I released, it really is, I would say, reminiscent of what the root chakra energy would be. And that's
Mm.
why the theme of the video is red as well,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to
Mm-hmm.
start with the base, you have to start with the root, you know. We're taking everything from the root and we're working up from there. And it's called torque because everything in creation begins with um, that initial momentum, that initial spark. You know, it's like you got the God spark, and then okay, I'm gonna run off and start creating some shit. You know, whatever it is, whether it's a flower or the way that a certain I don't know, different plants, different things might grow. You can see it in seashells and fossils and things like that too. You know, there's a certain ratio. There's a golden ratio. There's different things that happen, but this is also the moment. This is the moment where you're seeing the torque of creation in a way come forth and start moving. And that initial momentum was really important for me because not only was it the beginning of the album, and it was the the activation of the root chakra of the album to provide the basis and the grounding for everything to come, but it was
Mm-hmm.
also a moment for me where I hadn't released songs, and like I don't even think I was I on Spotify? No, I just got on Spotify
Uh-huh.
not that long ago. But I have been putting music out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But just because of, you know, creative blocks and different things and whatnot, I didn't, you know, I wasn't up on Spotify, I wasn't up on these different platforms. And in this moment, it was actually a moment where it was like, okay, I'm actually starting to return from this sort of hiatus that I had felt with myself, and had people. I mean, people. It's so interesting because it's like I don't have much of a following, but like people really do wait for my shit sometimes. Can I cuss on here? All right.
What's that?
I was saying, can I cuss on here? I accidentally let one
Yeah,
fly.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
I've been
This
trying to
is
keep it
not, it's
PG.
not, yeah, yeah, it's fine.
All right, for sure, for sure.
We're an independent production, so we could do whatever we want.
Sweet. So okay, yeah, because I have. It's so interesting because it's like I don't have a very big following, but like there are people who wait on my shit, and sometimes that means the world. You know, like because it's so crazy that I still like. Sometimes I have people hitting me up that like used to listen to my beats and things on YouTube, or found me like
Hmm.
way back in the crevices of the internet. You know, and had been just tuning in over like 7, 8 years, you know, and still like will hit me up to this day and like check for things, you know? And it's so crazy. I was thinking about this earlier. Like there was a time I went to South by Southwest, that music festival out in
Mhm.
Texas, and I remember I ran into somebody on the street who recognized me, or actually he ran into me. I didn't run into him because I didn't know who he was, but he knew who I was, and like he had seen me on YouTube, you know, just like vlogging and putting beats out and stuff like that. And he said something to me, and I was just so like, "What?" Like just blown out. I was like, "How do you?" I was like, "How did you? How do you even know how do you know me?" Like it's weird, you know? And I didn't think people were
Yeah.
paying attention that much, but it was so cool. It was like, dang, okay. It makes me think of it makes me think of like the intention and everything that I put behind my work a lot more, of like, wow, you know, even if it's like a couple of people that see it, this might mean the world to
Yeah.
them. This might make or break something in their life, or like really be the segue, you know,
Mhm.
for that transition
Mhm.
that they need to make or something. I don't know. But I'm like, all
Mhm.
right, that shit's special. I'm not gonna give up on that. So
Yeah.
in them days when I feel down and sad and, you know, doubts, and you know, I think about that because I have like a few of those that I try to, like, every time something like that comes up, like I just note it down, or I like keep it in like a place where I can always remember, so that I
Mhm.
never forget when, you know, I need to focus. And
Mhm.
so right now, you know, I do need to focus, and I feel like it's a really pivotal time, and I feel like going back to torque for a second, torque is the symbol of that pivot. Torque is when you pivot,
Okay.
that motion that's created. Um,
Mhm.
and from there, the gears are turning, everything is moving, you know. And so
Mhm.
now that that's put in motion, it's like I'm thinking about actually drip feeding the album. I'm not actually going to drop it all at once. You know, I don't think people are ready for that. I'm actually not even ready for that, in some ways, just
Yeah.
because there's a lot that has to happen. And I think that's the part of being a creator sometimes, especially when you're tapping into a lot of different streams of consciousness,
Yeah.
is you find yourself starting a lot of things, and the hardest part is to finish and to carry through with everything that you've made. And in
And
a
know when the end is and
yeah, to
yeah.
know, it's so crazy.
Mhm.
And sometimes I just think about it and I'm like, wow, like I feel like I wish I could move 10 times faster, you know, or I wish I had
Mm.
like two of me
Yeah.
or three of me, because, you know, I'm like, these videos gotta get done. And like, I want the songs to come out with the world, you know, as well. And I think part of my frustration, you know, in the past with myself, is sometimes I'll put things out before I can really give it some of the context that it might need,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, or I'm not necessarily around to really nurture the piece as much as I would like to, because I have to catch up with my other ones, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, they're all my little ones. You know, I love them all equally, but like they're,
No favorite
man,
child.
yeah, exactly. You know, I'm like, man, sometimes I'm just like, sometimes I have plans and things that, you know, I'm like, oh, I want this to come out this month. And it turns out being 3, 4 months from then, you know. And I beat myself up about that a lot, you know. I really do.
Mm.
I can be pretty hard on myself. And luckily, I have people in my life to help me create better self talk, you know. And I think mental health, just paying attention to your mental health as an artist, is, you already know,
Yeah.
we talked about this a lot.
Oh yeah, we've talked
It's
about this.
crucial. It's so
Mhm.
crucial.
Mhm.
And that's
And
one
it's
of the
work.
things. You say what?
I said it's work.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. You know, it's such an essential piece of the pie, and in that work. And one of the things, it's one of the things I feel like I have to mention, is it's very interesting,
Mhm.
but also a little bit heavier as well, is just really diving into that topic, opening that up a little bit, because in Formless, in synesthesia, um, there is a song. There's a song that I'm really excited to do a visual for. I kind of want to team up with an animator or somebody who does this more, because I it's something that I can do, but it's just gonna take
Mhm.
me a long time, and I don't want to wait that long. But
Yeah, huh.
I want to team up with somebody who does that, and I want to create a visual for this, maybe a claymation or something cute. But
Mm.
there's a song called "Best Day Ever," right? And
Mhm.
it's about mental health. It's about mental
Mhm.
health, and it's actually I the song is an instrumental technically, but there are words in the song, um, and the words are partially written by yours truly and partially by another friend of mine, whose name is Smooth, who actually passed away. He passed away just
Mm. I'm so
recently.
sorry.
Yeah, and that was something that it was really hard, but it was also something that is an integral part of the piece because he had a PhD in psychology, and
Mhm.
is somebody who also dealt with mental health struggles as well. And so the type of conversations that we used to have around mental health and how that ties into creativity and everything were really really fascinating. And I definitely love him and miss him, but I also feel like he's here with me a lot of times. And in that song especially, it's kind of got like some dark humor, but the way that it's written is like as soon as you think it's dark, it like immediately flips to the light.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll describe it in a way of like it's like the Groundhog Day song. Like it's like
Hmm.
the I wake up and in the song you hear it's what is that guy's name? There's that Mac voice, that computer Mac voice. When you sometimes people used to do it when they used to type things in text edit, and then you would press like read, and it would read it in the
Oh,
computer
yeah, yeah.
voice, and it'd be
Yeah.
like you went to the garden yesterday, or like
Yeah.
something, like
Yeah.
something, but it
Yeah.
sounds way more robotic, you know.
Uh-huh. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so the song, the audio, the lines in the song, there's a poem in the song, and it's written and it's recited in that voice,
Hmm.
but it's about mental health, and it's interesting because it talks about it from the perspective of like this is the best day ever. Like it's like you wake up and like everything has magically been reframed, and you are now in an experience of everything is great. Like literally, the sun is smiling at you personally when you walk outside, and like literally, like there's even like there's like a moment where it's very scenical, and it's like every day feels like the same day, but I wake up today and it's the best day ever. Nothing can get better than this.
Hmm.
And it's an interesting concept because it's almost like it caps out for you in this
Right.
in the song, like it almost caps out where it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't get better than this, but since today is the best day, like it's also in a
You
way
can only go
sometimes it can feel
downhill
like
from
the worst.
here.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it like tries to reframe it in a certain way, and it like gets happier and happier to a point where you're like, what am I listening to? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
But then like there are moments where like you like even hear like I'll sneak in certain noises, like you hear like the Soldier Boy chant where it's just like, yeah, in the background and everything as the sun comes out, and it's just like this unrealistically happy moment, but then
Mm.
it like almost honors the moment and is what it actually is, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
in its entirety, and you really do experience that in the song, this joy. But then it's an interesting thing to play with, and
Mm.
so um, there's that song which is talking about mental health as well. But then there's also I feel like there's some things that relate to it on the Rainbow Body side of things, with the actual vocal album where I do
Mhm.
speak to that very literally, you
Mhm.
know. So yeah.
I was gonna say that all of these projects sounds like everything is pretty interconnected,
Hmm.
um, and and, you know, maybe they're considered albums, and in another way, they sort of seem like, like, an entire, like, life of work that is just happening and evolving all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, is most of this solo work, or are you working on these projects with other people too?
I would say the album that I worked on, so Formless and um, the album Rainbow Body. I'm over here forgetting the name. Both of those are albums I would say I did at least 80 to 90% of the album, and I think I have a feature. I have a feature or two maybe on Rainbow Body, and then on the instrumental album on Synesthesia,
Mhm,
there are no features. It's all just from my imagination, from my head.
mhm,
A lot of it is things that I played out as well. I just literally just late nights, just like being half asleep, playing things at the keyboard, and some of are things that I also like. I taught myself a little bit of guitar. I taught myself a few different instruments, and also resample my voice a lot.
mhm,
So a lot of the instruments and things that you'll hear, like the dolphin noises I was talking about earlier, that's actually my voice, but it's just
mm,
I have different effects and things that I throw on it in order to make it more like an instrument. Because I like using my
mhm,
vocals as an instrument in that type of way, or to create an atmosphere.
mhm,
So for that reason, there was a lot of very like introspective and personal time that went into that project, particularly that it wasn't really something that it felt right to experience with another person before I experience it with myself, you know,
mhm,
to really expand my creativity in that way, and the way that I was approaching just beat making and approaching production and songwriting and things like that. There were a lot of moments that I could only capture them with like 3 hours of fuck around time in the morning, where it's like I have no expectations, I have no anything to do today. I'm dedicating my day to making weird noises on the mic and figuring out how to play the guitar in the most unorthodox way, and
What a
like
wonderful way
you
to spend
know
3 hours.
exactly.
I love that. I
you
love
know
it.
seeing what the bugs outside sound like, and sampling water bottles. So it was like,
Love
I
it.
don't know. If I did that in front of some of my friends, they'd be like, huh? Like what are you?
I
Okay.
mean, but who cares what they think?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, that it only could have come about in that way. In my looking back at it now, I feel like it only could have come about in that way, really
Yeah.
organically, at those strange intervals of times, in the middle of the night, the morning, hopping out of bed. Like there are even some tracks and things like I heard in my dreams, and then I recreated
Mm.
them when I woke up, you know,
Hmm.
and that was a crazy experience as well, But I think in it, I want to my second instrumental album, which I'm already there. I'm already there. I'm already thinking about the next one, but I want to do more collaboration with people, and
Yeah.
especially with my vocal album. Even though that is mainly on me because it's done, I'm just gonna leave it the way that it is. But there are some songs that I want to remix, and there's some people that I really want to work with
Mhm,
as well, in order to make the experience a full spectrum experience.
mhm.
Um, and I'm also one of those ones where I don't necessarily feel like I have to stick by the book too much, in the way
Of course
of
not.
like
Yeah.
if I make the album. and I put it out and it's one way, I'm really not against going back and making a whole nother version of the album a few months later and putting that out as well, you know,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
having featuring another artist on there, or expanding on a part, or bringing somebody up on stage to make the live performance like 10 times cooler. You know, like I love the fact that it's constantly changing and moving like that. Like I want it to
Mhm.
be alive and formless in that way,
Mhm.
of doing an album.
Mhm. I'm gonna ask you a question that maybe does ask something about form, but
Go ahead.
if you don't have a form for it, like, just that's cool too.
Yeah.
Um, do you know when you're gonna release this, and what is the format gonna look like when you release it? Or is it gonna just like you said, is it gonna just take its time and, like, there will be different stages of when you'll release perhaps the same song?
Yeah. I think at this moment I would say I would put the instrumental album out for a summer release,
Mhm.
most likely.
This summer?
Yeah, this summer. Although it really depends on how fast I can work,
Mhm.
because there are visuals and things that need to get made for it,
Mhm.
and sometimes it just
Takes
takes
time.
time and pulling the right resources and people together to make it happen. And sometimes getting everything all on the same page is not as easy as it sounds, you know.
It's a little tricky.
Yeah, but it's happening. It's definitely happening. The musical part is it's done.
Mhm.
I had a setback. My computer that I made everything on is no longer with us at the moment.
Oh,
Yeah, so
sorry.
it yeah, it kind of made it like it was kind of a weird time, in my life, these past few months actually, because I lost my computer. It broke down on me. I also lost, my mic and my one of my DJ controllers that I
Oh,
use, is also got messed up as well. So
I'm so sorry.
yeah, it's kind of a weird time where I was like really discouraged. I was like, dang, I was like, am I even a musician? I was like,
Can I
what does this
consider
mean?
myself a musician without my mic?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like I don't have my stuff. I can't create anything. You know, and obviously things got really dark when my friend passed. You know, because that's also somebody I collaborated with a lot,
Mhm.
and I was just like, wow. I was like, everything feels like it's being taken from me right now.
Mm.
I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like, I'm like, does this mean I'm supposed to go forward in this direction? Does it mean that I'm going in the wrong direction? Do I need to
Mm.
reroute? Like, what's up? And that is something that I haven't really fully wrapped my head around quite yet. But
Mhm.
my friend, he did say something that's in the video, in the watch to the end video. And it's interesting because when I made that video, he was still alive. He was still with us. And when in the video, when you get towards there's a certain there's a certain part where it goes into like some of my notebook and some of my sketchbook, and I do like some zooming in to show like some of the drawings and different things. And there's something that he wrote actually for me. He said, make music, make hits, and make it out alive. And he signed it and like burned the
Mm.
edges and everything.
Aw.
And it was like it was something I think about a lot, because his dream was always for me to pursue my dream, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
whenever I was like not in line with that, or falling out of alignment with that, he would always be the first one to be in my ear to tell me like, "Hey, like focus," like don't forget about the
Yeah.
the mission, you know. And I'm like, "All right, yeah, yeah, like I hear you, I see you, I know, I get it, And I think it's something that I always take with me, but I think when in that moment as well, when you see the piece of paper, it also flips to my notebook, which is kind of interesting as well, or my sketchbook. And there's a drawing that came to me. Um, there's a drawing that came to me, and I'm wondering if I should go into this or this could be another very long story. But
It's up to
you,
you.
it takes you, it ties back to the bridge moment, and it ties back to what's actually going on with the world. And there's some important moments about this drawing, although it's not the craziest drawing I've ever made or anything. It's not like a masterpiece painting. It's just like it was a download that came to me one day. I
Mhm.
hadn't drawn anything in a really long time, and for some reason, I picked up a pen and I drew a page of something, of a scene that was in my head that came to me at that very moment. I didn't really know what it meant. I just kind of set it down. But then later, which is generally how a lot of my art works, is like I usually will make something and then I'll figure out what it means later. Like
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
not always the type to like make something and have the intention and everything set
Right.
when I
Right.
do it. Sometimes
Right.
it's like I have to like uncover it like a puzzle where I'm like, oh, that's what that was, you know? And that's happened to me a lot, especially in songwriting, where it's like I might write a song and something in the song hasn't even happened or isn't an event that has happened to me yet, or an emotion that I'm experiencing. It could be for somebody else, but then it happens, later on down the line, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm living out these lines right
Mhm.
now. What is going on? You know, and
Yeah.
had some trippy moments like that. And that moment with the drawing is kind of one of those moments in a way. But
Mhm.
what the drawing is, just to describe, since people will probably be listening audio, and I can't, they're not gonna be able to see it right now where we're talking, but it is a black and white drawing that was colorized later. I added some color, some different versions of color splashes to it through digital mediums. And um, the in the drawing, there's actually a hole in the paper. There's a hole in the paper that I burned through from the other side, and
Mm.
in it, you'll notice as you look at the drawing, like you'll be like, okay, huh, interesting. There's like a hole in the there's like a pond, a pond or like a lake type of thing, and there's like a hole that's burned through, and first it's like kind of like the I would say the main focus of the piece, and you look in and you see in it it almost looks like little people that are coming out of this hole, because I drew the people on the other page that was behind that page. So you have one page and then the other page behind the page, but you can see through the hole onto what's on the other page, right?
Mhm.
And in that, this whole piece is really it's describing sort of like the bridge between worlds. It is, and that's why I showed it also near the bridge moment, you know, because it is the bridge. It doesn't look like a bridge, and it's not a physical drawing of a bridge, but it is a bridge because it is bridging two different worlds. You have this world of the people that are in the water, or in the waters, which ties into the water concept that I have as well. Um, but you also have it's kind of ambiguous in a way where you're like you don't know necessarily, as I start to tell the story of the drawing and things, you don't know whether these people are us or if they are somebody else, but
Mm.
it could be both. It could
Mhm.
be both. We could be looking at them, they could be looking at us, but
Mhm. Mhm. Kind of
somehow,
like in a dream.
yeah, there's this hole that's been burned through from one reality to another reality that are blending these two pages together. That now these two separate pages are now one, and there's some sort of bleed through in the timeline of what's going to happen from this point. And
Mhm.
in it, these people are peering into a scene of a black and white world. There's a reason why, because the drawing had to be black and white. They're peering into a scene of a black and white world, and there's wherever you see color, there's almost like a battle going on, you could
Mhm.
say. There's this abstract type of battle going on where you see color returning to places within this black and white world. So it's almost like this world devoid of frequency, devoid of color, devoid of life. There's life that's returning, but it is a struggle. There is a war in order for this to actually come back. So there's something that's fighting to keep everything just like muted, and there's something that's fighting to bring this life and expression and this creative force into the world. And they're going at each other, and they're going at each other in a place where you're like it's in the middle of nature. It's in like a forest. There's a tree nearby. We're in the grass. It's like, dang, like you don't want to just like, don't destroy the trees, don't destroy the water, don't destroy the nature. And even in the water you can see, on the side, there's like this black mass. There's something that's like in the water as well, because in the colorized versions of the drawing you can see, there's like, it's like this glitter, high frequency, almost like this ethereal mist, ethereal water that you're seeing. It looks like magical, like something out of like a fairy tale. But as this black mass is also in the water, it's almost like polluting the water, like an oil spill,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
in this, for lack of a better term, oil spill, it's made up of a bunch of money symbols. Like the black mass is actually a bunch of money symbols, and it's kind of like showcasing and highlighting the way that the the corruption has reached a point in so many ways that we're forsaking our natural resources and our natural way of being in life for something that's artificial, that is encroaching on all of these things, and it's muddying up the water. But it's coming from a place of greed. you know
Mm. Mm-hmm.
it's coming from a place of greed. It's coming from a lot of different places, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we're seeing where the money is going, and the money is directly attacking the water, the primordial force that is the
The
source of all
mother.
creation. And
Mm-hmm.
in it, I've also got some Japanese symbols of water in the water. You can kind of see, as well, but it's this is the moment, this piece specifically, even though it's not really a great, I wouldn't consider it like a super great art piece by any means necessarily, compared to like other people's work or anything. It's not something I'd hang up in a gallery and be like, yo, this is $5,000. Like, no, it's just like, but it is one of the most important pieces to the whole story, because it's the moment that ties everything together, where you see why it's important for Rainbow Body to exist, and
Mm.
you see why it's important for synesthesia to exist,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these things are meeting all at this one point, where
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing this moment that we've all experienced in another way, but this is like, okay, the world is being broken open, the veil is thinning, like now something different is happening, and we're peering in, and we're trying to figure out what it is. And yeah, I'm not even sure
Yeah.
how to riff off that, but I feel like that kind of like
Don't
wraps
worry,
up
you don't
the
have
that
to.
piece right there. Like,
Yeah, it's super interesting. And maybe one day it will be hanging up in a gallery, but it doesn't
maybe, I don't
matter.
know. Yeah,
It doesn't matter. It does what it needs to do for you now.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so later this summer, you're going to be collaborating with your parents, who are both local musicians. Can you tell me a little bit about the Muatas and the project that you're working on together, and what your experience was like growing up in a musical family?
Yeah. So that, okay. Let me backtrack a little bit. I have to preface, because I did talk to my mom the other day, and
Uh huh.
she's thinking about pushing the summer project back,
Uh huh.
a little bit, because they're just so busy and doing a lot of things, and they're not sure if they have,
Yeah.
the time to really do everything that it would take to put on a whole festival, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I can understand that. Even with my help, I think it would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
quite a feat. But we're gonna plan it out a little bit further, and um, yeah, do that a little bit later. But one of the things I think that really describes my family in a nutshell, for people who don't know, is, I guess we could kind of be considered like the Black Adams family. Like my
That's funny because I know your mom a little bit, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's accurate,
I'm
accurate.
telling you, you already know. Like she literally, her wardrobe is 98% black. Like, and if it's a colored item, it probably gets cycled out. You know. And my dad is
So
kind of the
funny.
same way. Me, I'm like I wear colors, but
Mhm. Mhm.
they, I went through a phase. I had definitely had my phases. Sometimes. Um,
Uh-huh.
but they moved up here. They moved up here before I was born. Actually, they came from Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and they had another band that they were in called Cold Front, and they played at First Ave and everything. And I feel like I've been blessed to have really, really dope parents. Like
Mhm.
that. Growing up with them, it was really fun. I got exposed to all kinds of different music. My dad's record and CD collection. He had everything from like cute little ambient shit to like you've got like rock stuff, you've got alternative rock stuff, you've got hip
Uh-huh.
hop, you've got
Uh-huh.
funk, you've got soul, you've got experimental, you got I don't even know what to call it. So I grew up on a lot of that. They came here because of the scene that was like very open and inviting for people of color to express themselves, and
Mhm.
like the scene that Prince had going, and just the influence of the city and being able to really be their true selves within it. And I think that was an integral part for me being able to find myself as well within the arts and going to art schools and things like that,
Mhm.
and growing up here, just picking up on a lot of the stuff that they really help lay the ground for, in a lot of ways. For
Mhm.
instance, like the thing that we were talking about, the potential festival, which I don't know how much I am or not supposed to talk about it, but I'm gonna talk about it a little bit. Um, is it's supposed to be like Afropunk 2.0.
Mhm.
So basically, the originator of Afropunk is not actually with the what is Afropunk today. Afropunk today is a lot more corporate,
Mhm.
without going into that super in detail. You can guess how the spirit of it has been affected. And I think them being able to get in touch with the person who is actually the originator of that movement and then bring him in to be able to help create something, like a festival type of thing, some sort of
Mhm.
event here with that spirit is really exciting. And I think that's something a lot of people have been waiting on for a long time. And so I'm excited and happy to be a part of and make happen. Um,
Yeah. I think people would be
especially,
really into that.
yeah, yeah, because it's something that's like it's so integral to a lot of the things I feel like our city is dealing with right now. Because you have the Afro portion of it, which is like you've got all the BIPOC creators and people are who are fighting the fight against the racial injustices in the system and trying to
Mhm.
reform those systems right now. You've got everybody who is recognizing that, okay, hey, we need to shift the power. We need to shift the things that are affecting us. And there's some of the stuff that we grew up with. We have the power to change. This is in our hands right now. This is on our shoulders. That torch has been passed. And then you have the punk portion of it, which is so interesting too, because you have like this dichotomy of you've got punk, which is like the aesthetic of punk, of what people associate with punk now, and then you have what punk really meant back in the day,
Mhm.
of when the spirit of punk first started, and that topo, that egregor was first formed, is people were able to come together and create this feeling that was like, hey, we need to change something. We need to take all of this pain, all of the trauma, all of the things that we're feeling, and we need to fight. We need to stand up on our own too. We need to really be vocal about this. We need to let people know what needs to be changed. And I think there's so much of that that's coming back around full circle right now,
Hmm.
um, just with everything that we're dealing with socially, and just to be able to see that and really approach it from, I'm the next generation, um, is really powerful. There was a man who came up to me actually at one of the shows, one of my parents' shows recently, and he came up to me and he saw what I was wearing. He was somebody who performed. He was a really incredible performer, and he came up to me and he was just saying, because he was older than me, and he was saying, like, back in the day, like, it would have been so different for me to, like, dress like you, or like be into some of the things that I know you might be into. Like, I got in fights, with people about
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. Like,
Hmm.
there's white boys would try to jump me. He told me, and like
Oh
different things,
man.
and how all he was saying, like, all those ass whoopings that he took in that moment, in those moments, coming up, were worth being able to get off stage and see me, the product of what they all created, being able to express who I am so freely,
Mm.
and to be able to pick that up, and to go forward from there. you know Starting off
Mm-hmm.
all that, he was just talking about how powerful that was, and we all, like, sat and we, like, held hands for a second, really just, like, tapped in with each other's energy, and it was crazy. I was just like, wow, like, it put a lot of things together. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I wish we were doing it sooner as far as the festival, but it'll come here when it comes. I'm gonna be working
Yeah,
on
in due time.
yeah, we're working on a zine. I'm gonna be working on a zine to come out with, probably throughout the year. Just with that theme in mind too, so people can look out for that as well. Um, and the visuals, I did not speak on the visuals quite enough today, but that is gonna be a big part this year. We're shutting the game down. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, my team over here, we've been cooking, and it is time to take the food out the oven. So I'm excited.
Amazing, amazing. If people want to experience your work or learn more about you, where's a good place for them to find that information?
Mm, I would say you could go to koji.to/Kamau. And I'll spell that out too. It's KOJI.TO/KAM, as in Mary, AU. And so if people go there, that would be the best way to really get tapped in with everything that I do, because it's one link that'll link to all the rest of the everything.
Your
And
universe.
yeah, that might be the easiest way. But if people look up Crush on Google, you'll find me too. CRXSH. You'll find all my stuff as well, at least on the music side.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm super down to earth. People can reach out. I love talking to people, meeting people.
Great. Thank you. Uh, Kamau, it was so great to speak with you, and I really enjoyed it.
Yo, me too, me too. It's been cool. I've never done an interview like this, or even anything so long. Like, we've been going for a couple hours now, so,
Oh, we're doing a
like,
good job.
I'm amped up. I'm amped up. I'm geeked up. So thank you for sharing this experience.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. This has been another edition of the Sanguine Arts Locavart podcast.